You need to report to the police,
Yes.
the authorities, the appropriate authorities, okay?
I think a lot of people won't report though, especially if it's SIL, because it means they lose the client.
Yes.
Ooh, papito. Okay, sorry, I'm getting really animated. Yeah.
And then I get abused.
Are you still doing it?
Yes, of course. It's the only way I can pay for things.
No, it's
How do you think I got here?
it's really important to talk about all of that. How providers are also struggling and not meeting up, because there's a whole lot of sustainability issues with the request in compliance and the kind of quality NDIS is looking for,
Yeah.
and as a provider to be able to live with yourself, knowing that you're providing to that level, you almost have to. It's almost towing the line of bankruptcy.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah, it's pretty much like, I think
Great
it's
segue.
impossible though. I think what
Great
people have been
segue.
saying. I think like there's a lot of providers that try to do the right thing, but it's not possible, right? Like financially, with the Aspire Hub, for example, we do a lot of different things, and we try to do things that will benefit our participants, but the manpower that we can actually delegate is very little. Every little thing that we have to account for, it's insane, and we have to do it because if we don't do it, it's basically between what will keep us alive and what will basically put us into the ground.
Absolutely. I begin to think about a lot of things that we do every day, and if you want to be serious about the NDIS business and meet up with the SLAs, the service level agreements, that people really need to get answers to in real time, and let's say your SLAs give or take 4 hours, it's almost impossible not to go bankrupt with the level of admin that you'll be needing. Because you're getting a lot of emails, phone calls from families, stakeholders like your support coordinators, your families, your allied health practitioners, NDIA themselves. If the client is, if the participant is on the complex side of things, it's to get the reports, to get the get all of this thing. It's really hard to maintain that quality without either taking a big loan or towing the line of bankruptcy. So it's you notice that most NDIS directors almost have like a different source of income to fuel their to keep up with the staffing requirements of NDIS business, and it's almost not sustainable. There's a big organization called Stewart Brown. They've been doing a lot of benchmarking for over 30 years in the aged care industry. I think they just started doing a lot in NDIS, and their report finding is it's really, really interesting, and they continue to do. They're doing so much work as well. I think I was in a networking event where this was mentioned, so I don't know how true this is. I think they said over 50% or 60% of providers are on their way to bankruptcy if they continue the way they are operating.
Yeah.
So it best to bring a lot of questions and a lot of things that you see on the media. There's a lot of issues that I think about sometimes. I'm like, the media is telling people that a lot of service providers are dodgy. I think the dodgy people are getting more airtime than the people doing the right work. So there's an imbalance in perception of what NDIS is and what the people that are doing the right work is. So there's a whole lot of discussion in this. And look, I, for instance, I know at Anchored Care, we're struggling to actually keep up, with, a profit or get things moving properly without always stretching and going into some of our backup money and overdrafts. So I'm not sure. I'm just being candid.
And you know what though, it's quite interesting you say that, Desire, because the NDIS, I feel like the NDIS has created this problem, if you think about it, because they've introduced independent support workers where they can charge, what's the going rate these days, $60 an hour?
Yeah, 60 odd. Close to
Whereas a provider pays their staff anywhere from 29 to 36 an hour.
40
So
an hour.
14 because of
Yeah, yeah.
shads as well.
Yeah.
40 an hour.
Yeah.
Price guidance.
And we constantly are battling with staff as well, where they apply for the job, even though it says 35 to 40 or whatever it is an hour, but they're attending the interview, they're attending all the inductions, and then they're like, I need to get paid more. I can do this and get, why am I doing this and getting paid 35 when I can go and be my own support worker and earn $60 an hour? So the NDIS has created this problem.
100%.
But at the same time, they have a problem with non-regulated independent workers. So how do you manage that?
It's a big problem. It's a big problem because I don't think there's a level playing ground here. You think about the investments that and the compliance requirements that you have to adhere to as a registered provider. You touch on a very good thing that is a big problem right now in the NDIS that I think I don't know how we got here, and I think this is the fault of the design or the fault of the lack of attention to critical matters. And I see these things, and I'll come back to this point. I see these things happening again with all of the NDIS legislation and all of that.
Yeah.
They give you a grand idea of this is what's going to happen, but they don't give you final details, or they don't get down to the nitty gritties of how we should operate or do a proper risk assessment or even change management to say, okay, we're gonna implement this way, and this is what's going to do a proper gap analysis.
Yep.
What are we actually introducing? What risk and what are we introducing with this sort of design of policy and all of that? But back to that point now. For instance, I'll give you a real-time example. For us to onboard a worker, we obviously use a system. In our case, we use Employment Hero. You're paying top dollars for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is it okay to mention applications and software names here?
Yeah.
We're getting real here.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
$8 per worker.
Yep. So you're it's probably $8 or $10 per worker.
8 to 10,
Yeah.
depending on
it's
the
a 10.
premium version.
Depending on the premium.
Care is doing well, guys.
So we pay top dollars for that, right? So you're doing that. You're doing the training. It costs manpower, the onboarding training, the interview time as well, and your insurance is on the line. All of and on top of that, you have to have an LMS, a learning management system. We use a shameless plug to a great company, NGO Training Center. We use NGO Training Center, and you're paying. I'm not sure what we pay for that right now. These things are not cheap, right?
Yeah.
You're also giving them training. You're giving them all of this, and someone that just squashes your profit margin, right? You almost run a zero profit margin.
But you're forgetting wages.
No, I'm not even talking about wages. You're forgetting wages, and
induction
work
time.
cover, work cover, superannuation,
payroll tax.
Payroll
You have to
tax.
pay now monthly on monthly basis.
You have
Come
to
on,
pay
state tax as
You
well.
have to pay payroll tax.
You know what though? I think when they switch, changing from payroll tax to being paid a quarter, I think at that point of time to now being monthly.
Yeah.
It's such a huge impact, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of consideration that's not given to, I guess, the wider industries as well. Being in an industry where wage is such a big component of what we do, of our costs, right? And payroll tax is basically one of the biggest costs as well. For us, now having to fork it out monthly, there's a lot of consideration that...
Payroll tax is a tax that you are taxed because of the number of employees that you have, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and it's also the
wages,
earnings, the earnings and the wages, the cost,
the wages. So this is what I don't understand, and I'm very simple. I'm very basic, right? I always go back to first principles, right? Now, and this might offend some people. You talk about payroll task, right? Now, you tell me that the more I do to help employ people, to take away the slack from the economy, you're going to penalize me for that.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, someone on the other side is enjoying Netflix at home, right? Is enjoying Netflix at home.
Living the life.
He's going to tell me all the episodes in different kinds of, Meanwhile, I don't even get the time of the day to watch anything anymore because of the hard work we're putting in. And you're going to take that money that you've taken from us to them, and all of these things. I don't know if you have to include this part of the thing, but I'm just ranting, right?
Yeah.
So these are some of the challenges. It's a lot, right? And you ask yourself, I feel like as an employer, as an entrepreneur, there's a lot of things that you're balancing.
Yep.
You hear in your head you need to employ more people because there's a ramp up for quality assurance and compliance.
Mm-hmm.
But the government is also driving a wedge up in your waist not to do that with all of these things.
Yeah.
And you're balancing. The tension is a bit too much sometimes. And I get that we use this money to increase help the economy, but it's really important for us to encourage employers because I think employers are really struggling. I know so many businesses that are calling me every day. Hey, can we merge? Do you wanna take over?
Yeah.
People. I'm looking at their books. I'm like, what is going on? And I think I've never had much gray hair like this till I started running a business. And obviously, I enjoy the perks of being a business owner. I think it's a calling. But at the same time, there are ways that we can actually work on some policies to
absolutely
help
and
business owners.
Absolutely, and it's a lot of people though, especially in the sector where they come into the sector thinking that it's easy money. They think like, oh yeah, the NDIS is a scheme, so I'm gonna scheme. So they come in, not knowing what they're doing. They don't even know how to look after themselves, let alone look after somebody that needs the support. And 99% of the time, I think that's why they fail, because they don't have their processes. They don't know what to do.
I think most people, like a lot of providers that come in at the moment, right? So they come with the mentality that the NDIS is very profitable, right? It is often not the case. If you are trying to create a very profitable NDIS business, it's not really possible at this stage, right? A lot of what the providers are doing are the dodgy stuff, right? Which obviously we'll touch upon later, right? So that could include wages, it could include how they bill and things like that.
Or even structuring their businesses.
Correct. So, at the end of the day, a lot of these providers are coming in thinking that it's for, for profitability. They're going to regret it later on.
You're going to regret it. I'll just hopefully pass on to Trady to comment on this. At the networking event where I attended, and I heard a bit of these statistics on profitability and how NDIS service providers are struggling. I think one of the recommendation was that in order to stay afloat, you almost have to offer a plethora of services, a whole lot of services. That's the only way to actually be profitable. Okay, to be in business. And that is a big problem on its own, right? Because you're now getting into that.
Let's not forget conflict of interest.
Yeah, conflict of interest. Yeah. Now quality as well. So you might be an expert in A and not be an expert at B, but you have to do B to be sustainable, right? So it just dilutes the overall quality of the scheme. Now, there's a whole lot of things that are not factored. That is one of the biggest challenges. And for us as well, we're now also expanding and also staffing people, but joining into other resources, other funding and personal savings that we should be there for our kids and for family. And these things are some things that I think that are not, people don't speak about a lot of time, and we all pretend like things are all rosy. I think it's really important for whoever is listening to this podcast to, count your costs very well, especially if you want to get into the NDIS, know about these hidden charges and costs associated and the problem, and find a good strategy that will actually benefit you and upskill yourself in so many areas, because that's the only lifeline here to help you actually stay afloat. Otherwise, you are actually, it's going to be dead on arrival.
Yeah, I do agree. There's a lot of good resources, right? But they're all very scattered around, but you can find them at this stage, right? and they advise you, and they give a lot of education as well on how to operate as a NDIS provider within the current sort of landscape. I think those are what you need to do. You need to do a lot of your own research before you enter into the industry.
100%.
Failure to do your own research is basically, just asking for what do you call it? Asking for trouble.
Trouble.
Yeah,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
I think years ago, many people came into the sector with a good vision, a good goal, something that was benevolent and altruistic. And then they didn't have the wisdom or the understanding at that time how to ensure that their business was going to be sustainable or that it would continue or leave a legacy. Everything that Desire mentioned earlier, I think of stuff like the CRMs, the cost. You didn't even mention or touch on Zero yet.
I didn't even
Your
know that.
payroll CRM, and then you still got your CRM, which is Shift Care or whatever you're
Oh my
using at
gosh.
that time, which also costs an arm and a leg. And so trying to, I guess, put all of those systems together to ensure that you're giving or providing quality is something that we often don't talk about, we don't think about. I have looked back at all our CRMs that we're currently using. I don't know how we got to like 9 different systems. I just did a massive review this year and ended up seeing, we're using 9 things. DocuSign over here, Zero's over there, Shift Care's over there. Then there's a Happy HR or Employment Hero, and then there's and you just start adding things on and you don't think of the cost because you're like, the auditor's coming. I need to ensure that I'm showing that,
Evidence.
I've got to provide all this evidence. And then it's annoying when you find out that a lot of your workers, or there are ABN workers or independent contractors that can come in and don't have any of that pressure.
Yeah.
I remember speaking to an ABN worker who told me, I'm supposed to actually do notes. They've been operating for like 3 or 4 years. They had quite a lot of clients. I couldn't believe that they didn't even keep basic notes. So I was like, what happens if you're investigated by the agency? They're like, yeah, but I'm not registered.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's funny you touched on that. This is one of the biggest problems. Why I also feel like the NDIS data sets that they have is not so accurate, because you see some people, they are driving, some participants, because you have a lot of data that you can actually from the registered providers who are obligated to actually report on all these things. You have data, you can see how someone is progressing or retrogressing. But the pitfall of going to some of, look, with all due respect to, sole providers and all of that, they are good unregistered providers. I got to say out here, good unregistered providers and sole traders. But, the main thing is this, if you don't know that you have the obligation to report, you're not going to report. You always take the easiest part of anything. Now, going back to that point, if you're not reporting to the NDIS, they're not actually getting a feedback as to the participants' well-being, if they're doing well or if they're progressing or retrogressing. This is why you see a lot of participants are not getting appropriately funded for what they're supposed to, and the NDIS keeps, it ends up coming back to us, the registered providers, when some of their fundings are drained, and you're in a tight place where you get to a participant. For instance, I'm going to share one. We had a participant that was referred to us, and they just had a strict budget. And I looked at this participant. They had a lot of things happening, diabetes and all of this. We were allowed to just charge, I think, 4 hours at the end of the day, because the independent support workers have drained the budget. But this lady had a big risk. It wasn't actually had to say, look, I cannot do this anymore. What happens is we use the 4 hours, we provide the help, but we know this lady actually needs more help. The next morning we come back, she has had a fall. Because she has had a fall, she is all by herself, with a lot of she's on herself with her own wheeze and all of that. It was so bad. We kept on writing this report, letting them know this lady needs funding and all of that. And also, it broke my heart. And I just said, look, we might have to actually seek support, because we wouldn't be the right one, because, what we did everything. We handed it over to someone who could actually do it, because at that time we've done a lot of pro bono work that we were actually so in the red that we couldn't help. But it's this sort of things that we're seeing constantly every day. And these are some of the pitfalls of the design of NDIS. This lady is being failed by NDIS. And in the time past, we will do a lot of pro bono work, but a lot of providers are also taking a lot on from the failures of the system. And it's good to have this podcast to actually expose things that providers are also seeing, to have this lens on providers, because I think we don't get a good rap. We're always victimized.
Yeah.
People
100%.
So it's I love this.
I think you're talking as well about the intersectional failures of society. So the NDIS current obsession and focus is just on the person's disability, but we know that there's other parts of their life that also affects the challenges that we're seeing. Housing, drug and alcohol, those coming from justice. Often we at Chosen Family are seeing participants who have or fall within all those brackets. So here you might have someone who comes from the out-of-home care system, who's been released from custody. When they're released, their Centrelink is already blocked. They need to unblock that. They have no money because they've already used all the funds that they had while they were in custody. How do we think we're setting that person up for success when they can't even have transport back home to their family? Then they don't have accommodation. Then they still need to get themselves sober. And then they still need to navigate the NDIS. By that time, that person has reoffended. Stats in New South Wales show that most of our guys that are released from custody are reoffending within 72 hours.
What?
And when we have discussions with them, why are you reoffending in 72 hours? They say to us, like, no one's helping us.
Yeah.
Well,
Like,
what are they?
What
meant
did
to
you
do?
expect me to
that's
do?
right.
I've got a child with, I've still got to care for my child. And then I do get my Centrelink, but it doesn't pay for accommodation. It doesn't cover the basic human costs that I need. And then also I have a mouth to feed. Some of our clients in the past have told us, well, listen, my family's back in custody. They're all in jail. At least I have a house. At least I can take the money that I do have and then send that or share it with my family. So I think we're seeing a lot of pressure as well from outside or external factors, like providers I speak to that are still providers. Rentals are so expensive. You put 3 clients in there, you're still at times not even paying the rent, let alone we still need to look at the hidden costs like Wi-Fi and internet and all those other things you need to do, or electricity or energy. So like,
I'm glad you're talking about some of this.
This is the stuff that I'm picking up on. There's other factors as well that I don't think, it hasn't been co-designed the way that we're saying, because that's become a buzzword, but I don't think NDIS have truly then looked outside of themselves and actually gone, what are you seeing the challenges are? Let's actually have a proper consultation and let's start fixing those other external factors as well.
Because it's very quick for the commission to place a lot of the responsibility on the providers, right? And what it feels like at the moment is that the providers are getting blamed for everything. Right? A lot of those things that I feel like are not the provider's responsibility. It falls back on the society, it falls back onto the NDIS, not the provider. But what everyone's expectation is, it is very easy to shift the responsibility. And that's what everyone's doing, right? Because I come from Singapore and we call it like Tai Chi. It's where everyone just pushes the responsibility away. So we call it playing Tai Chi. And it's just like, everyone just shifts the responsibility to the provider. It's like, you're the provider. You need to be able to make sure, you need to, what's your favorite buzzword? Duty of care. You need to extend your duty of care to the participant. If you're not doing this.
Choice and control.
You want to go there?
Can we do buzzwords?
Let's go buzzwords.
Are you trauma informed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, if you're not, if, for example, if a participant doesn't pay for rent, if I tell a spoken, look, I can't sustain, I really can't afford for this person to be
You're money
in
hungry.
the house. I'm money hungry,
Yeah.
This person will be homeless. What are you going to do?
Exactly.
And it's like, again, as a provider, I can't sustain like this.
And you know what's interesting, John?
And it's not a once or twice thing, right? Throughout the 4 years that we've been operating. It seems to be a common scenario.
Every day.
And these comments, where did they come from?
Yeah, let's get to the root. Support coordinators.
Yes. Support coordinators.
No, we shaking some tables?
Just going back to what you said
earlier.
earlier.
That table right now.
I still accept referrals. Just letting you know.
Just FYI. But anyway,
Hey,
just going
support
back to
coordinators,
what you said.
we love
earlier.
you, but we're gonna shake some tables.
Yes. And look, hey,
Not all
there
of
are some
you.
amazing support coordinators
Yeah,
out
not
there.
all
Right?
of
Let's
you.
get that out of the way.
Yeah.
There are some solid support coordinators where they work in harmony.
Yep.
Support coordinators, providers, they gel well. They know how we operate.
That's
We know how they
aligned.
operate.
100%.
However, there are some cowboy support coordinators out there
Yeah.
where those are the comments they make. That's a duty of care.
Because they have
hang
no
on a second.
understanding.
Yeah.
It's not my duty. It's not. It's yes, it is. But at the same time, it is also your duty of care to make sure that the participant has the funding that he or she needs.
I think we, as providers, are taking on the responsibilities of also informal support, which is the family.
Come on.
You know,
Mhm.
I was
I,
waiting for
I
this.
think it's really important for things to, there's a lot of expectations on providers to become providers, provide everything, and also become informal support
And family.
and family.
Pseudo family.
Yep.
And when you're not, when you feel like, I feel like it's the pressure's just too much.
Yeah.
I think we need to have support coordinators who are informed and who know their job and know the
Yes.
boundaries and bounds of our service delivery expectations as providers that can educate people. Say, hey, this is what a provider can do for you,
Mhm.
and this is what. But
They
what I'm
can't.
seeing, this is what we can do as well. What I'm seeing is the lack of education.
Yes.
There's a lot of things I can talk about here. And I want to also talk about the good things that the NDIS has done in this aspect. But before I go there, I want to also talk about one thing that we're seeing. A lot of referrals that we get, or some referrals that we get, not a lot of, some referrals, a good number, maybe 20%,
Mm-hmm.
comes with a disclaimer, which I find is an interesting one, especially for someone like me. Now you hear things like, "Oh, please, my participant doesn't want black people,
Hey.
Samoans, Indians,
Hey.
or anyone. They only want
Asians.
Caucasian,
Uh-huh.
right? Asians. They don't want,
No gays.
and
Let's add that in there.
and they say that, they say that to me, and I'm looking at them like, wow, okay. And
Okay,
sometimes-
hang on a sec. So
Yeah.
who said this to you?
Oh, I've got support coordinators.
Wow.
Yes, support coordinators say that to me.
I have that
All
in
the time.
email. I probably have about
It's quite
16
interesting.
emails sitting in my inbox right now
Yeah.
with the same requirements that you're describing.
Okay, I want to know if it's across the board because this is a big thing that I'm seeing.
Big issue.
And support coordinators are not, I don't know. Some good ones will be, hopefully,
Mm.
because I'm not a support coordinator. I don't know. But I'm seeing this. This is very prevalent, right?
Mm.
I'm a person of color. Now, not just because I'm a person of color. Now, you look at statistics, right?
Mm.
The statistics of people that they're demanding are not taking up this job a lot.
Yes.
And that's a fact.
Yep.
Right? You have a lot of migrants, a lot of students, and a whole lot of other people from different ethnicities,
Multicultural.
a lot of multicultural
Mm.
people that are taking up support work as a profession.
Mhm.
Now, you almost, I think that back to the buzzword, choice and control has now given people the right to discriminate
Mm.
a lot.
Yes.
And there's an intersection of choice and control, right? And people hide under the guise of choice and control
Thank
Yeah.
you.
to discriminate
Mm.
and have some level of racism. Look, there are legitimate participants who have speech impairment or that cannot understand some accents.
Yes.
Mm.
There are legitimate ones, right? I'm not talking about those ones. I'm cognizant of those ones, okay? Because sometimes people can take this out of context,
Yes.
And sometimes I ask questions: why do you need? Why don't you want an Indian?
Mm.
Why don't you want an Asian person?
Mhm.
Yes.
Why don't you want this? Why don't you want that? I always ask those questions, and sometimes they just come with flimsy excuses. Oh, the last Asian guy did this to me,
Mm.
and the last African guy did this to me, and I ask myself, you never hear, and I'm gonna be controversial here or whatever, but I'm gonna say, did the Caucasian guy, did they, every Caucasian guy or female or whatever,
Mm.
did they actually do something wrong, would you stop receiving Caucasian? You never hear, I don't want a Caucasian. I've never had any referral like that.
Mhm.
You know, I think it's important for us as support coordinators to educate people on the bounds of their requests.
Yeah.
And also screen that. I think it's all about education. And I get you, some people grew up in different generations.
Yep.
Okay. And some generations are adverse to multicultural and all of that as we go. But people are now beginning to know that we all have a red blood cell. Okay. We all bleed red, right? This is one of the things that I'm seeing. And that sometimes that stalls our onboarding process. And sometimes I'm like, you know what? That's all right. If that's what you want, go manufacture it. We are not the right providers for you, you know, because we're an employer of we're an employer of choice for everyone. Okay, we don't discriminate, and it's important to actually let people know. If you're a support coordinator, let people know that these things actually are against the Fair Work Act.
Yep.
You know, you can't discriminate on someone based on their sex, gender, race, religion,
Yes.
whatever.
Yes.
You know, and it's important for us to know that yes, there's NDIS, but there's a bigger governing body that supersedes and that we have to adhere to. There are so many things that we can talk about here. And I think it goes back to having support coordinators that are educated and informed and knows what business is and knows the things that providers actually have to adhere to. Because sometimes it's not easy. We just take it and just go. And the one thing now, I'll go back to this, and I'm not sure if we're here yet, that I feel like the NDIS changes have done better is actually helping screen what the support coordination looks like.
Yes.
And looking at, you know, qualifying people and getting people that are competent to actually come and work in this sector. I think there has to be that level of, you know, what's it called? Competency check.
I think it's not just support coordinators as well, unfortunately. I think everyone in this industry needs to better educate themselves around the intricacies of being a provider. Right? There's a lot of things that we do as a provider that we have to report to multiple different bodies, right? Or we have to cater towards different legislations, Work Health and Safety Act, right? The Fair Work Act, the NDIS Act. And a lot of this usually conflict with each other, right? And it's the thing, right? A lot of the governing bodies and the legislations as well, if you look at being compliant with all of them, it's not possible, right? Let's talk about a little bit about the Shared Award, for example. Right. I just had a conversation with
we not?
I just had a conversation with a planner just this morning, and it really infuriated me, right? So under the Shared Award is that if you have a sleepover shift, it has to have a continuous 4-hour shift either before or after the sleepover, right? A planner funded a participant for 2 hours of evening shift or afternoon shift from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. I said, no, darling, that's not how it works, right? I need to be able to charge evening shift for at least 4 hours a day. Now, while we're on the topic of that, right, I said to the planner, I would have to roster on at least 3 staff for the day, right, in order for me to do that as well, right? Is that going to be what's beneficial for the participant? Because the participant had very strong behaviors and cannot deal with change well. So on top of that, right, so after we spoke to the planner, we explained about this is what the Shared Award requests for us to do. No budging at all, right? Still say she's only funded for 8 to 10 and that's it. And I was like, okay. So I then spoke to the support coordinator and said to the support coordinator, hey, we need to do this because of the Shared Award, we have to be compliant to that. We are obligated to provide the support worker with another 2 hours a shift. And we then proposed different ways we can deliver the service, right, without sort of impacting us as well. And one of them included sort of like possibly changing of ratios at the point of time because it was a step-down model anyway. So I was like, maybe we just change that ratio a lot sooner. And then the support coordinator asked us, so you're willing to take a loss on this, but you're not willing to take a loss on the evening shift. And I was like, well, no, realistically, I don't want to take a loss on anything. Because again, for me to be sustainable, I can't take a loss on anything. And it's just frustrating. Again, then the responsibility boils back onto me as a provider again to choose which loss am I going to take, right? Support coordinator is not helping me out.
Should we actually be in this place in the first place? It's the lack of education and the lack of understanding of these things that that we go through as providers. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of mainstream media outlets or NDIS media outlets, so to say, that actually touch lights or understand what we go through, the juggling between acts and words and all of these things that we go through. especially rostering. It's a nightmare. And I'll take us back to bring us back to this point. You said something. I'm going to give you statistics, right? We have, we're at Anchored Care. We're a seal provider. We are not sustainable for rent in any of our
Yep.
our seal.
Mm-hmm.
That is a big statement,
Mm-hmm.
right? We actually are out of pocket rental for all rentals.
Yep.
When you include
Yes.
things like the
Utilities.
the utilities,
Yep.
This is what furniture and
the
also not being a
we're not
rubbish
even
house.
we're not even talking about furniture. We
Beautiful
furnish all of our house.
Exactly.
So I'm not talking about the capex.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about the capex that
Yep.
goes into furnishing. I'm talking about now the OPEX,
Bills.
the bills,
Utilities,
the utilities, right? We have to
cover that yourself.
cover this ourselves.
Yep.
And yet the providers are being vilified. And look, with all due respect to our almighty leader, Bill Shorten, we're gonna just shake some tables here with all due respect, okay? We love you, sir. But I'm just gonna say this, as a minister, respectfully. I know it's not to say it's uneasy. It's the head that wears the crown. So I know you got a lot of things doing, but I would love you to, just accord providers. Speaking of plan managers, support coordinators, and service providers, a little bit of respect, because I feel like you measure more on the minors.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
You measure more on the minors. There's a lot of there's a lot of there's some dodgy people. There's some dodgy people that do ridiculous things, right? And that gets the media time more than the ones that are suffering or doing good things. I think it's high time that you go and review your releases, right? And see, I'd love you to celebrate more. I think you've got a few days to finish your tenure. Celebrate more providers that are doing the right things, the ones that are that are on blood pressure pills because they're not meeting up with bills, pun intended. But it's really good for you to just celebrate a little bit more, because people are now getting the wrong notion that every service provider is dodgy. For instance, and I'll share this story and I'll end back and I'll hand over to someone else. Now, the other day I was out in the just a men's gathering and just just kicking out with the boys and everyone was talking, hey, nice to meet you. What do you just say? Oh, I'm an NDIS provider. So the first thing that guy says, because they've been watching the news a lot, oh, you dodgy, you dodgy fellas. Yeah, that was the first thing. I laughed because this is what the media feeds them. And I was struggling to tell the guy at that time that he was saying dodgy fellas, that we were struggling to meet bills, right? To pay staff, to do all of these things. And it's funny that we don't actually get the credit. So, Honorable, how do you address him now? Honorable
lecturer?
Honorable lecturer or minister?
It's Vice Chancellor, isn't it?
Vice Chancellor.
Yes, I think it's
I don't know. I think he hasn't gotten to that title yet. So, Honorable Bill Shorten, we love you, we respect you, and we know that leadership is not easy. But this is my open invitation to you to accord us a little bit of respect and care to know what we're going through. I know, and I believe that the NDIS, the intention of NDIS is amazing.
Yes.
It's beautiful. I don't want to. It's not all bad, and you have done some phenomenal changes that I want to celebrate here. But this is an open invitation from me to you to actually celebrate the hardworking providers a little bit more.
Yes.
I did the statistics on your page. The statistics on your page, the postings that I saw was more changes, which is good. Now, if you look at the tonality of your postings, they are more negatively geared towards providers vilifying dodgy provider, and there's a lot of fear mongering.
For someone paying 150 grand for a ghost rider, The tone can be a lot better.
Darling, I used to be a minister. I can write your speeches. It'll be so motivational.
But look, at the end of the day, though, we do have beer shot in the tank for actually the implementation of NDIS. Without him, we don't have NDIS.
Absolutely.
The previous the Labour government back in the days did that, and no, see, the intention is right. It's just the mechanics and the operations of it, and if we can, and I love what Bishotten has done. By the way, lately, on October 3rd, he brought out, he defined what an NDIS qualified support is.
Yes.
This should have been done ages ago. The previous government should have done it. The previous government should have done it. So, like I said, there's some amazing things that he's done. Are we gonna go there? Because I was reading that list. I saw something like, I'm like, there was something that was not part of the support. I was like, was this even part of the support going? There was cuddling services, like, just come, let me call
cuddle therapy.
Cuddle therapy. My goodness. I need me a bit of cuddling right now. But let's not go. Let's not send this off the track.
Can I jump in quickly?
Yeah, jump in, please, before I cuddle you.
Okay. I've got a husband.
I'm joking. Just scratch that, please.
It's chick, come fetch your man. Come on, Jesus. You know what we said about the community. It's bigger than what you think.
Please cry that.
Some of them got children, but it's okay.
Hang on a sec. Just a disclaimer.
They'll
Right?
come back
You
to
guys
daddy.
are friends. You guys are
We are friends. Just a disclaimer.
Just a disclaimer. Put it out
He
there.
is my brother.
All right.
Okay.
Oh, God.
Just a disclaimer. Put it out there. Okay.
No, listen, there's no dodgy cuddling happening. Desire was talking a lot about education from support coordinators, plan managers, just all of us. I think I would also encourage whoever takes over who's the next NDIS leader, I would love for them to also look internally at their own ranks. I have called the NDIS so many times and spoken to them and earnestly wanting to learn and understand something within the legislation, and received 6 different opinions from 6 planners or people within the agency themselves. Often the information is conflicting, and that confuses us as well. I don't think, and I do acknowledge Bill Shorten has said this many times, he does believe that a lot of providers are doing the wrong thing, not intentionally, but because they don't have the education. But I actually think you actually have to go back into your own service, the agency itself, and actually educate them as well, even the investigators and those teams, because I've had conversations with them many times before where we've been called in for investigation because, I'll give you an example. We had a client who came from justice who had been injured while he was in custody, suffered severe burns, was not treated or sent to a medical facility and hospital, released into our care. He was so badly infected that we had to take him to a hospital. And when we took him to the hospital, they said that they could not release him that night because his burns were so severe. Anyway, this client had challenges mentally and had called the NDIS and somehow made some form of a complaint that we were not going to fetch him at 1 o'clock in the morning when he was trying to call us to come and fetch him and place him into a cell. Like, there's just so much complexity to the situation. Anyway, they released him. The hospital finally released him and called us and left us a voicemail. And the agency...
At 1 a.m.
Yeah, at 1 a.m., right?
Wow.
And my phone was off, of course. So I got the voicemail in the morning. We rushed over there. We tried to assist him. We took him back to the accommodation. But the agency had called me 7 months later. He was no longer in my service. He was back in custody again. And when the agency contacted us, I said, okay, I'll give you all the information I have. They said, yeah, well, we're here to investigate you guys because you're not providing duty of care to your clients, especially the specific client. And I had to end up spending 30 minutes educating the investigator on the fact that once someone's in the care of the hospital and the medical system,
That is
it's out of our hands. I can't claim and send workers there to be with that person because then it would be fraudulent. It took probably about a good 20 minutes for that person to finally understand what I was saying to them and then to finally close down that investigation. But the fact that the investigator themselves needed to confirm with whoever their team leader was shows that there was missing education there.
Mm-hmm.
And their tone was not the best. The emails were not great. It didn't give me confidence that we were working together. It felt like it was an us versus them. It was very hostile, very like it felt like they had made up their minds that we were dodgy instead of coming to us and going, hey, from your side, what's taken place here with this transition from custody to the hospital? And I just wish that goes for coordinators, anyone in the system, that when you are dealing with a provider, work alongside us. Often we want to help. We want to extend ourselves and our services. You'd actually find that the transitions, the referrals, whatever the process is much simpler if you work with us instead of interrogating us.
I think it's amazing what you said, Trady, because that reminded me we received a notification from the Commission 2 days ago for a reportable incident that we submitted 12 months ago. We don't even have this client anymore. You see what I mean? So that gap alone, tells us how far behind they are.
Mm-hmm.
And
how much they care.
And you know what?
That's right.
That opens up another can of worms because, we're jumping quite a fair bit because we were talking about provider viability. But, while we're on that topic, right, with regards to that particular reportable incident, the NDIS Commission is now strengthening in numbers, right? Because they want to increase the enforcement, which I do agree with, because
100%.
no point having legislations if you don't enforce it. But from this reportable incident, it was quite a serious one that we've reported, and the employees were terminated as per our procedures. And what has then happened was, we realized that this same team of workers are still working with the client with a different provider.
Oh, wow.
Right? And we actually notified the other provider and nothing was done. The provider did not listen to it, right? And it was shocking.
Should we name names?
No.
No,
I wouldn't go there just yet.
Kidding.
No,
I'm
not
just
yet.
kidding.
Not yet.
I felt my soul, my body.
We're going to
sorry.
survive this podcast.
But I mean,
I felt bad. I was like,
just let me finish that, right? So,
shaking tables.
So anyway, so this provider did nothing about it, and when the commission called, I told him about it.
I think, John, hang on. I'm just going to interject for a sec, okay? I think you need to give a little bit more background story. What did the support workers do?
Look, I don't want to talk too much into it as well, but it's to do with neglect.
Okay, if you don't, I will.
It's just neglect.
It is neglect.
Yes.
You're right, and it's also fraud.
Yes,
financial fraud to the client.
Wow.
So
I got a story after.
Do you elaborate?
Absolutely.
Our listeners
yes, absolutely. And
we can learn from this as well.
That's right. So this particular client was a 2-to-1 support.
Yeah.
So this particular client even had 2 support workers for a sleepover. One sleepover, one awake shift.
Okay.
So, we discovered that even though the client was a 2-to-1, she was only receiving 1-to-1 support. However, the second staff would still submit their rosters and pretend that they were on shift. So this has been going on for what, like maybe 3-4 months?
Yeah, 3-4 months.
3-4 months until, there was a few things that came up and we started investigating.
Yeah, there was very serious breach in professional boundaries as well. So they were getting the participant to go to their family gatherings for dinner and things like that.
Oh, do we want to talk about professional boundaries?
Yeah, well, again, we're opening a can of worms, right? Because this can go on for
hang on
quite
a second,
long time.
Desire. This is going to get better. This is just the start.
And going out for lunches, barbecues, and things like that. So they were spending a lot of time with their own family, right? And just getting her to tag along.
So for clarity's sake, right, these support workers were taking the participant, the NDIS participant,
to their
own personal family gatherings.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Without notifying us.
Not the participant's family.
Yeah.
I think it's important for that clarity.
And without notifying us at all. So, if not for the checks and balances that we did post, obviously what has happened, we would have never known. Right. And not only that, at the point of time as well is there was a lot of occasions where they were trying to coerce other staff into joining their
Group.
little arrangement or their group, right? And that's where also we had reports from that said staff as well to say that, look.
So when you say arrangement or recruitment group,
Like,
were they gearing up to go independent or something?
So what they were doing
No, just
was
keep it hush hush.
Correct.
Yeah, we'll keep it hush hush.
Oh,
So we
okay.
continue this arrangement where it's only one support worker. The other support worker would just, go home and do whatever they do. They will only have one sleepover and little things like that, right? And, so the support workers report to us that this is what was happening as well. So obviously we lapped them up and we said, look, we are going to investigate this matter because it's obviously a very serious matter. And we tested them as well. And when we actually went to look for ourselves, and this was very early in the morning, there was only one staff on shift. So we confronted them, and instead of obviously aiding with the investigation, the entire team resigned, right? And a couple of weeks later, or a few months later, I found out that they were working for another provider at the point of time. And I was shocked. I was like, okay, well, you know what? You do you.
Not your problem.
That's pretty much what it is. And then until I found out that this same client that we were working with was going to this provider as well. And that's why I'm like,
hang on, slow down because you're too fast right here. So what I'm hearing you say is when you confront them, when you worked out this scheme and all of this, now they're like, okay, bad news, we've been found out, we're out of here.
Yep.
They resigned and went to this certain provider.
Yes.
Right? And afterward, this provider that, let's back up a little bit. This cohort of dodgy support workers that have been rotting the system, abusing this client financially, and negating his needs and not really providing the appropriate support.
You mean the syndicate?
The syndicate, we're throwing names here. I forgot what we got a lawyer here. Syndicate, oh my goodness. I'm so busy, okay? It's a big word for me. Now, this whole support workers took, that abused this guy, left to another company, and this participant is about to go to the abusers under the auspices of this provider.
This is the product of breach in professional boundary, right? So when you breach that boundary, you obviously created a relationship that goes beyond what a support worker and a participant would be.
That is.
So what they did was when they went to the other provider, they kept in contact, right? So
They did.
yeah, they kept.
So hang on a sec. So this, so when this group of employees resigned, obviously, this individual with a disability, he escalated behaviors and got incarcerated. So while he was in incarceration, these group of people would go and visit him at prison
The facility.
Wow.
And
that's deep.
This was while she was still we were supposed to be the providers when he got out.
Come on, Queensland.
So anyway, we get the email from the Office of the Public Guardian to say that they've decided to make a move and transition providers from this provider to that provider. And this group of staff are now employed with that provider.
And I've let the OPG know that this is what happened while they were with us. I pretty much let everyone know about this story, right? Just
including the NDIS.
It's so that, again, because this is such a serious breach in boundaries, and it's obviously led to an unhealthy relationship.
It's an exploitation,
It is. It is
exploitation of a vulnerable person. Like I think, let's call a spade a spade. You're exploiting a vulnerable person, and obviously they'll misinterpret that because every human being wants to feel love, right? He or she is incarcerated. And these same syndicates come to him in the prison or wherever they are, and they'll be like, "Yo, this person actually cares for me," but they don't know that it's a financial ploy for them. It's they care for the money, not for him.
Absolutely.
And for them, he or she is just a cash cow.
Yes.
And these are the people that actually give providers a bad name, a bad rap. And I'm glad you guys found that out. But look, just keep going.
And then we talk about enforcement here and how the commission, like I said, was strengthening in numbers in order to enforce like regulations and things like that. But now it starts to feel like a tick box exercise, and that's something that Bill Shotland said about auditors and about providers. Right, we tick the checkbox. But that's what the commission. It feels like what they're doing at the moment. So from this current reportable incident, when I had the call with the commission to explain the situation, all I was told was that, everything is all good. All you need to do is upload a copy of the termination letters onto the portal, and they will close the reportable incident. And that was it.
I think who audits the commission, actually? That's another table we need to shake. Who audits the? My goodness, am I getting ahead of myself? Please, guys, don't get me on Channel 7 News or anything.
I want to jump in quickly just for your scenario,
Yes.
because you've mentioned something that legally we talk about undue influence is what you're talking about.
Yep.
But also, I think your story, and I have a lived experience of a story as well, very, very recent, very fresh. This wound is still infected. I would say, the commission will then often turn around and go, but what about dignity of risk?
Yes.
Ooh. Which is something we haven't touched on.
Yeah.
And so I've seen a lot of this illegal activity that takes place. Often it's either choice or control, it's under the guise of choice and control, or dignity of risk.
Yep.
And then the commission, like you, I've had the same instance where I had a group of support workers that were very intelligent, and I called them a syndicate for a reason, because I found out that one of them was actually the director of another direct supports company that come in and work for us.
Wow.
They raised no flags for the longest of times.
A director of support.
Okay, come on, tell you what's happening in New South Wales. We spoke about Queensland.
I'm excited.
I need me some water for this one, okay?
Warm up your tea.
Trade is
get your
about
biscuits.
to spill some tea.
I'll tell you what happened. Yeah, so New South Wales. Whoo, Jesus. So we had an instance where we had a beautiful client of ours that was unduly influenced by a group of support workers under the guise of his new family and his new friendships that he was creating. I think something that we also need to tackle and recognize is that a lot of our clients are lonely. They're experiencing severe loneliness and a lack of good, healthy relationships. Anyway, we put in a bunch of great support workers that we believed were amazing, that could in some way guide this young man, because he was having certain challenges at home and had a loss of family as well. And so anyway, the support workers became, I guess, pseudo-family. They supported him, took him out. They were there for him. It was amazing to see what they were doing with him. I have to note as well that they built his capacity, which is what all the coordinators wanted to hear. So we gave all those positive reports. I had nothing or no reason to suspect that support workers were stepping outside of their normal duties. Yes, there were small little things that came up, but I was sitting there going, in the normal day-to-day of support work, I can see how a conversation like that could come up, or how they could support him with something a little extra. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of providers right now are sitting there going, yeah, I can see this happening in my organization as well. Anyway, cut a long story short, eventually this client just left our facility. No notice, nothing. We became extremely concerned. Eventually, we had to go to the police. We had to lodge and state that he's now a missing person. Went back and forth with the coordinator at that time, and then found out via conversations with many people that one of the support workers' wives had registered an NDIS support company.
Classic.
And when I did further digging into her, found out that she also owned a plan management company.
What?
And then found out that she was also the registered support coordinator for that company. Yeah, follow me on this because it gets wild. And eventually found out that support coordination was terminated first. So it didn't raise a lot of red flags with us to her. And then eventually plan management was terminated and changed to a different company. So I had no reason to suspect that anything was happening here until I sought out on ASIC and found out that they own the plan management company as well. And then eventually the direct supports were moved and we were terminated and our accommodation, etc. But eventually just found out that there was the syndicate. That's all I can call them. This group.
Cartel.
So they were approving their own invoices, in essence, for coordination as well.
Yep.
Wow.
and so could easily cut us out and could easily, swindle things around. Eventually found out that the client was paying for more things and things that were not, official direct supports, if that makes sense. So accommodation, food, travel, etc. And then eventually what they did was they ended up going back to the commission and lodging a complaint against us, specifically me, yours truly. And so the commission came and questioned and investigated us. And when we provided them all the evidence, they asked me just to upload my report. It wasn't even 24 hours. And then I got an email back from the commission stating, this has now been closed. We have no concerns for what you're mentioning here.
And see, this is so important though, like conflict of interest. Support coordination and provider and plan management needs to be 3 separate entities. I just don't know why it's taken so long for this to happen.
There's a lot of fundamental issues. I did make a joke before that who audits the commission, and you guys laugh. Because
I'm with you, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
I'm with you.
Who audits the? There's a lot of things, right? Are we not ticking the boxes? And it's really important for us to hear that because Bill Shorten used our leader, fearless leader, Bill Shorten. He used the word just ticking the boxes, right? And I feel like, funny enough, we can flip that script to say we feel that some of the investigation are not really investigation, and it's just about quality control. These guys, what sort of training are they actually getting? Because people who come to investigate you sometimes, you just have to be objective and have open minds to start with. The tone of the investigation sometimes matters. You already feel like you're a criminal because they're probably sipping their own Kool-Aid, of the media that they're putting out there. Everyone is dodgy, Sorry, I get a bit animated when I'm saying these things, So I think
don't worry, we haven't noticed.
At all. I think it's really good that we actually, we have professionals working in those places to start with.
Yeah.
Because as a provider, you feel sometimes that you're under attack. You're getting vilified by the families, you're getting vilified by the support coordinators, you're getting vilified by your own minister and the commission and all of that. I think you guys need to also, and this is now, the bigger problem I see is how do we ensure, support workers actually keeping to professional boundaries. There's a fine line between professional boundaries and maybe what you call capacity building support. There's a fine line there. Now, there's a bigger question. I'll probably drop this here and we can go to it or we don't go to it. There's an intersection that I don't know if any of you has hit in your service provision game. There's an intersection where this whole thing converges. Dignity of risk, duty of care, and choice and control.
I think for me, right, like at the end of the day, it really does depend on whether the participant has that capacity to make decisions. That's the first and foremost. If a participant has that capacity to make the decision, that's where I run through a session where we complete a dignity of risk and risk assessment around their choice, right? So someone's capacity can change very quickly.
100%.
Right, and that's where we fall into that sort of trap where we don't know what we are meant to be doing. Right. And unfortunately, there's a lot of times where, if we notice that someone's capacity to make decisions has changed, we will obviously advise them to go for a to a GP to get a referral, to a psychologist to reassess their capacity.
Yeah.
But for us, at the end of the day, right, as a provider, I think when that situation arrives, and obviously, if the participant is refusing to sort of cooperate in that sense, that's where we consult them, right? We basically let them know what the risks behind the decisions are, what are some alternative decisions that they can make, and then if they still intend on making the decision, it's how we actually support them in a manner that's safe for the participant and our staff, right? Obviously, if it's dangerous for our staff, then we do not support them in that.
That is another angle. I love that.
So, man, Desire, thank you for taking all my wounds and sharing it publicly. So we've just had a client who's terminated with us, and there was no legitimate reason about service delivery, or they weren't upset at anything, but basically they had another provider offer them a certain amount of money, and they ended up going there. We can talk about that too, especially those in New South Wales offering laptops
Gift cards.
and iPads. I see you. So
Wow.
I see you. And so basically with this particular client, the coordinator, the behavior support therapist, all of us were in agreement that the decision that they were making was very risky. It was very dangerous to their future well-being, even to the NDIS plan, because they didn't have the funding that they wanted. They kept saying they want 24/7 funding or supports. And we, as a responsible provider, like many, were saying, no, we can't do that because we might either be fined or eventually we'll run out of your funding, and then what will we do? How will we support you? Ultimately, it's just not feasible. So eventually we all had a case conference. We had a meeting with the client. We shared this in multiple ways. Everybody was trying to communicate it in a beautiful way. I eventually just said to the client, ultimately, you're going to make the decision that you want to make. I feel that in the back of your eyes, as I'm looking at you, you've already made a decision. I know that ultimately that decision is not going to be beneficial to you. These are the consequences of your decision. And ultimately, I need to release you into the world and allow you, because
control.
Yeah, and that to me is choice and control.
Yes.
That is it. Not influencing in any
Correct.
way, not pressurizing, not getting a team together to try to, maneuver something or frame it in a way that, benefits all of us. And it was difficult for all of us. Often with choice and control, I feel like there's a lot of pain attached to it because you've built relationship with family. You've spent all this time doing some of that benevolent work that you don't get paid for. And you have to watch this client make the wrong decision, and the natural consequence is that they may be hurt in future. I pray that they don't. I'm not wishing ill on anyone, but we had to basically sit back, and I informed the commission. I just sent an email saying, this person has transitioned out of our care. I know that you guys don't care, but if you ever think of investigating me in future, I'm going to bring up this email where I've told you and outlined all the risks, all the issues and concerns. And now I've given this person the option, and they've opted for that decision, which is going to lead to that consequence. So you can't come back to me and say that I overclaimed or I oversupport or I tried to do undue influence, all that nonsense. Like none of that can come up because I have been in the right and I've consulted a team. And this person has decided to go this way, which is the dodgy way. Often they don't have a transition plan. We see you. So it's just those are the types of things that raise flags. That's how I deal with that intersection, that gray area there. I've done everything I'm meant to. I've asked them to have an interview with me to tell me what we could have improved. Another tick box. Thanks, Commission. So I've had the exit interview like an employee with the client and asked them what they wanted to share with us, and sometimes they opt not to.
Can I ask you a question? And we have seen this happen in different cases. You've got a participant, they are their own decision makers. Okay. They love to use a lot of recreational drugs or even more harder substances, and you've got a support worker, and you say, "Hey, mate, look, this is not the way," and you've tried to raise this up with the support coordinator, and they've tried to offer him help, and this thing is impacting them in an adverse way, and they continue to do these things, right? And there's an intersection there where you have also your social your obligations, do you and there are nefarious activities, even like with things like borderline, you're not sure if they're dealing as well, and all of that. We see all sorts, right? We see all sorts. You do your advice, you do all your how do you handle those sort of situations? Because these things happen every day, right? I don't know if you guys, help out participants with the justice system and all of that.
Yep.
You're trying to help them, not to reoffend or end up in the justice system.
Yep.
And sometimes, human beings are creatures of habits. They go back to their old ways, and you see that this is not the right part. You're supporting them, and also you have your own obligations not to put your work as in harm's place. So
Yes.
sometimes you have to excuse yourself.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
You have to excuse, because sometimes you're like, yeah, support worker, you want me to do this capacity building, but if this guy is engaging in illegal activity, we need to remove ourselves.
Yes.
Right? You see how there's a dignity of risk there. There's a choice and control. They've
And
chosen,
then there's workers' comp.
and there's workers' compensation, and there's a whole lot. This thing can get really complex, and
Yeah.
if you're a new provider, these are some things that you need to think about as well and choose. There are many parts of this NDIS service provision
Yeah.
that you can choose not to do
Yep.
and do as well, and just understand the complexities of the work that we're doing. Sometimes you're expected to report some things to the police. Sometimes you're not expected to. Sometimes, where and all of that. Look, if it's illegal, if it's criminal, you
If it's
have
happening on your
to. If
property.
it's happening on your property, you need to report to the police,
Yes.
the authorities, the appropriate authorities, okay?
I think a lot of people won't report though, especially if it's SIL, because it means they lose the client.
Yes.
Ooh, papito. Okay, sorry, I'm getting really animated.
Like,
Let's
yeah.
go back to
You're
And
right.
It,
You're
it
right.
has happened to us, right? Like, we do have participants that are obviously consuming drugs and things like that, and we strongly discourage. So all of our houses are alcohol and drug free.
the house rules, yeah.
Yeah, and when it comes down to drugs, we
The way you said it. He said it so deflated. Yeah, the house rules.
No, those things saves.
yeah you need to you need
You
to
have
have
to
those.
establish
You have
need
to
to have
get
those,
that,
right?
To be firm.
And if you're a new
And-
still provider, you
and you
keep
don't
on.
have them.
You don't have them, and you don't specifically put there no drugs, no alcohol on the property. And if you want to, or whatever, I'm not sure. Please always review and
Be
You're a new
specific.
sole provider and
And
you
you know
don't
what the
have
funny thing
those.
is though,
We're ready
right?
to come fetch your clients.
Like,
You know.
if you don't put it in there, it's not the participant that challenges you sometimes. It's the support coordinator
As
that
a support
challenges you. And
coordinator.
I'm like, mate, are you for real?
Do you say if you put it in there, you don't put it in there? I've been challenged in different in different regards to that, even the alcohol side, right?
Yeah.
It's a gray area. It's a gray area. Like you feel like it's their property kind of.
Yeah.
And it's a gray area that no one has taken time to define. There's a lot of gray areas in
There is.
in NDIS, so you can you can obey some rules and in some and you can disobey some rules. That's a gray area, and some a school of thought would say, look, the gentleman or lady can boost themselves to to stupor or whatever.
Yep.
You can allow that. Some will say, look, it's your property, you have the right to enforce whatever. But where do you not take out choice and control for them? Where do you take out that dignity of risk? You see what I'm saying? We're going back to that topic:
Yeah.
dignity of risk, choice and control,
But
and duty of care.
Yeah.
So if you say yes, they drink so much and they get drunk and they get sick and all of that, where do you get in trouble? If you say no, there's a body of work like, oh, it's their human rights you're taking up. So the work of a provider is really caught up for them. It's an interesting one, but I want to hear Professor John's experience and his
Prof, I didn't know you were
and
prof.
his Dr. John.
I think in regards to dignity of risk, right, obviously participant has the right to determine certain risks for themselves or the decisions that they make. But likewise with providers, you have a risk tolerance. As Sam Rosenbaum always says, as a provider, you need to determine
Hi, Sam. We love you.
what your risk tolerance is, right?
Yes.
And I always say to new providers, when you come into the industry, take a risk-averse approach because there's so much gray areas here. Yes, you can go the very risky route,
Yeah.
but the problem here is that it will get to you someday, right? So, yes, it is a gray area, but as a provider, that's where you got to say, look, if you're unsure, you might have to say that you're not the right provider here.
100%.
You might affect you, but it's better than you having to shut down your business later on because you're not doing the right thing because you didn't know that you were supposed to be doing that. And for people wondering, right, like at the end of the day, when it comes down to the gray area, Everyone is in the gray area. The NDI is in the gray area. The commission is in the gray area. Every provider is in the gray area. How do I know? Give the NDI a call. You put in the 1-800 number. It's like, oh, hey, I've got a question for you. They give you an answer, and you're like, oh, can I have that in writing, please? Oh, no, we can't.
They
Sorry.
will never give that.
Can you please email inquiries to NDI?
Case by case.
All right. You do that with Fair Work. You do that with any government bodies. As far as in my experience, anyway, they will always not give you an answer in straight, or they will give you an answer over the phone, but they will never put it in writing.
Yeah.
I encourage all providers, and we do this ourselves, and maybe this is just me being an ex-lawyer again. Everything needs to be documented.
Yes.
So we even have a phone system now. Everybody knows people use 3CX or another version of it. And it basically records your calls as well, records the text messages, and they can just be archived. And I often use those actually in investigations. Same with email. I document everything that is said, and then I keep that on file just for a rainy day. So even when I have someone who is doing a great job, but who's asking questions as to why you do that, try to explain the process. One of the things I love is a lot of the times the auditors will say to me, explain why you're doing this. It's not that, there's a clear definitive with the agency, but just explain to us why you have that in your document, your accommodation agreement, or whatever, So we allow for alcohol on premises, no drugs, because ultimately, just like a normal rental property, if someone's come and rent and they're paying their own way, that person, 100%. Once again, if they don't have a proclivity and it's not a particular weakness or challenge like alcohol for them, go hard. Let's have a party. Panthers won, by the way. So just saying, like, you also want to still have your site it mustn't feel like a prison or custody.
100%.
Yes.
Like if they're escaping that, and you still want to allow for some joy and some fun and for your
to
clients.
feel like home.
Yes, needs to feel like home.
I think we've shifted a lot from the block funded days, the institution kind of days where people feel like they're in an institution. The whole concept of supported independent living is
it really independent if we're still cooking and cleaning for them and doing everything for them? Just asking a question as well.
And then when we don't do it because we are trying to support them to do it, hey, we cop
and we don't do it. The support coordinators terminate service or start giving us warnings, or the family because they don't like that the bed wasn't made.
It's a tough gig, but
the bedroom were messy when we visited
because they're so
kitchen
messy.
was dirty when we visited.
And then there's photos attached as well.
There should be a peak body, and I'm sure there are peak bodies that actually helps to demystify some of these mysteries and gray areas. That
could have it for another episode.
I'm waiting for someone to start running for the next.
That is actually for providers, because I feel like the design was designed somehow without the correct input of providers. You need to think about when NDIS was designed. I don't know, and I don't know. They probably did a co-design and all of that, but we've evolved so much. I think there's the thing has already gone far. We need to actually stop and have a feedback where, and I think that's part of the things that Bill Shorten is trying to do. I think we should do more of it, where you get a lot of feedback from providers. What are you experiencing? What are the gray areas?
A more agile approach will work well here, and I think with the NDS, because it's such a big scheme, right? And at that point of time, NDS was very much needed, even before it was introduced.
Yeah,
I think the problem here was that when it comes down to making improvements, and they always come to us providers about continuous improvement, they need to do that, and they need to do that a lot quicker, a more agile approach, right? Like if we talk about the IT space, it's more like having those sprints, getting community feedback. Did
I hear you say IT space? Do you want to talk about pace? Oh, sorry. It's just it's a swear word here, right? It's a swear word. We don't talk about pace.
Oh
my God.
We will talk about it later on, maybe.
Oh my goodness.
But
it's on the list.
It's very strange that for me, that NDIS, it's such a big scheme that change management, as you talked before, is not being done correctly
at all,
right? And if we look at what's been introduced so far, when you talk about the bill, when you talk about some, a few of the different things that the NDIS has introduced, it's like, where is the communication? Who is actually managing this whole entire change?
It's lost in what we call transitional period,
Exactly.
whatever that means.
And see, this is where then there is no education, because
Someone's
education is
trans,
part of change management.
100%. The lack of education in this industry it's left
Shocking.
providers, right, really scrambling for some sort of leadership, you know, and I think we need to or actually have educators who know what they're doing, and community engagement people that are there for providers. I know you have them. I've been to some networking meetings, but I think we need more. And sometimes some of those guys are clueless, with all due respect.
Yes.
You know, ask them, oh, how can you? They're like, oh, we'll get back to you. Get back to you is a code for, man, I'm out of here. You know?
Oh, I don't have the answer.
I don't have the answer.
5 minutes later, all you see on LinkedIn is open to work.
A few moments later. Sorry, man. Look, but it's really important for us to be guided, and we have a central repository or some sort of body, knowledge bank that we can have some of these things. And we, NDIS, if I was the minister, this is what I'll do. This is how I'll pick what I can do.
I told you there's a pitch.
This is what I'll do. I will have a dedicated website that is a two-way communication. That's like, what are you experiencing? I know live, because NDIS is still evolving, right?
Yep.
A live feedback website dedicated to providers.
Shut
for
up, my
questions and
service.
answers. Providers need answers.
Yes.
And we get 6 or 7, depends on how long it is, different answers, And please reply to our emails, like put it in emails. We need that sort of back-to-back channel where we can have two-way communication. Look, it's not easy. NDIS and the commission, I feel like you guys have your work cut out for you. And let's talk about the positive. Actually, I think this is very. It's been there's a lot of there's been a lot of disadvantages here. Can we just go to the positive?
Absolutely.
I think there are some things that the NDIS has finally done well, and I'll start.
I think the biggest thing here is it's quite interesting when you go onto social media like Facebook and stuff like that. There's a lot of participants and support coordinators and families. They've got something to say. They're always moaning and carrying on about the NDIS. Oh, I didn't get funding so I can go buy my aircon. Or I didn't get funding so I can go on my 2024 cruise. But quite recently I visited the Middle East, as you all know, but they don't even have a scheme. There are people with disabilities on the street. There are people with disabilities hidden at home because they're ashamed to take them out. They're ashamed to, there is nothing there for them. So, but when you look at the grand scheme of things, we are in a country that actually has a scheme. We have a scheme. Yes, it's not perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, it's far from perfect.
100%.
And, it seems like we are on the right track to making it somewhat perfect, but we have a scheme. And I think, this message is for everyone out there. It's just be happy with what you have.
Yeah.
If you have X amount of funding for the year, utilize it, and just...
And just quickly, I'm going to go off topic a little bit, because I think this is one thing that I really wanted to touch on in this podcast, right? There was a social media post that I read not too long ago, and it was about a family questioning about the charges of a SEAL, right? So their son was, I believe it was a 1 to 2, and the weekly charges was 6 or 7 grand along those lines. And people were jumping up, like they were posting in there. It's like, are they, they're such a ripoff, they're charging so much per week. What are they delivering? And I was thinking to myself, there's so much also, miseducation or misinformation that's spreading around because of what's been happening in this space, right?
Media.
Where, they don't understand intricacies, right? We paid staff $40 an hour. You can calculate for yourself, how does that work out, over a period of a week? We are literally, when we pay the staff, over $40 an hour, we make those investments, we're not getting it back, right? We're not getting like thousands of dollars back. We might get back a couple of hundreds or whatever that might look like. And this is the thing though, when people see big numbers, they get scared, right? When participants see big numbers.
And they forget how, they don't even ask, how does this work?
Exactly. And so when someone comes in with a $500,000 budget, they're thinking, and this is such a ripoff, but it's not. it's again, different government bodies that sort of led to this path as well, right? Like again, the whole Sheds Award, the whole where the wage increase, the NDIS price cut has to increase. So there's a lot of things that people don't consider, right? When sort of talking about the numbers in the NDIS space, and it sort of concerns me as well, because if people don't clarify it, the more they think that providers are a ripoff, right?
I think it's misinformation. Like that's what I was talking about, right? Bad press.
Yeah.
Bad press. I think if you look at all the ministries in Australia, NDIS is probably and this is why, I need to address our fearless leader a little bit. I think, it's fair to say that you're one of the ministers that somehow that also you're doing a lot of great things, right? And I applaud that, because there's a lot of non-negotiables that should have actually occurred a long time ago that you've implemented. But the one thing I also see is you have also brought more negative press to the great people, the great workforce that actually works for you, and that are taking the slack of the slack from the NDIS and some of the designs, and if you do the maths, we can stay here and argue about anything, give our own opinion, but numbers don't lie, right?
Yes.
So if you look at so many benchmarking websites about the NDIS, you will see that more than 60 to 50% providers
60%.
are 60-something percent are running at a loss. So how come now everyone is carrying on about that the industry is a ripoff and all of that?
Exactly.
Yeah, we have the dodgy ones, right? Get them out of there, and I appreciate that. But also control the narrative. And this is why my Solace podcast is really important, because we're also here to put it out there. There are two sides of a story.
Yes.
We're trying to give you this side of the story as well that you don't see. And if you're listening to this podcast, you probably be like, oh, this coming from a provider's perspective. That's who I am. I'll talk about who I am. Okay, because we don't get to talk about our stories a lot. And if you don't tell your story, who's going to tell your story? The narrative is not balanced. Okay, it's an unfair narrative out there, and it's important for providers to come out and tell their story. It's important for us to have grace on providers. I think we need to actually treat providers with not just dignity and respect, but with grace. It's not easy. The mechanism of service provision under the NDIS for a service provider, it's not easy. A lot of providers are paying extra electricity bill, gas bills, maintenance, and all of that, because the disability support pension doesn't cover for a lot of things and cannot actually pay sometimes more than 280, 270. So providers are taking out the slack. So from a rental place, think about this whole thing holistically. But this is the thing. Most of the clouds on social media don't even know these things, don't even know what seal is.
Well, and it is across the board, right?
100%.
Social media and everything. And there was recently an article that talked about the the top 1,000 providers that's claiming from the NDIS at the moment. In a purpose to vilify providers as usual.
That's also.
But there was a bit of information in there, which obviously speaks to your statistics around over 60% of providers actually not making anything. And out of the top 5 providers, I believe there was only one provider that was actually turning a profit, and these are the top 5, right?
I want to know who that is.
You're claiming over.
I'll send you the link.
You're claiming over hundreds of millions of dollars a year, but yet you can't make anything. And you know how scary that is, right? Because when you're at that scale already, any cost could tip that over, and you're not making just a 10 or 20 grand loss. You're making losses by the millions of dollars.
Millions of, I see, when I look at a P&L, profit and loss, right? I see a lot of money come. I see equal money. Just, it balances out.
Yes.
But now we're actually like this, right? Yep. And because we're doing a lot of pro bono work, right?
Yep.
Because it depends. There are different kinds of business people as well, right? You're the ones that are like, I'm a pro social justice, help out. Sometimes we get a lot. You get some people that you want to help, and we need to balance it with being sustainable and viable as a business. And a lot of providers are in this boat. There are more providers that are into the whole social justice. Oh, we got to help, because sometimes, the system actually abandons people on the doorsteps of providers. We don't talk about that. That's a podcast for years. I'm sure everyone of us has stories.
When the hospital just releases very quickly a client,
5 episodes long now.
When a hospital releases a client without any proper funding.
All right.
Yeah, we should take a break.
We'll let Trady finish what he's saying.
I was just giving the cheeky example of when hospitals just quickly release clients, and then providers quickly have to rush because the coordinators filled out the referral form at 5:45 on a Friday afternoon, and you're expected to quickly get a house ready and
everything.
Transfer everything and get them ready. I think ultimately, from what I've heard from all of you, we need to be more curious and not so judgmental, so quick to judge.
Yes.
Just curiosity is actually going to lead us into a better place. Asking more questions.
Literally, self-learning. You know what I always tell providers, and and even people, in my team, I said to them, don't wait for me to give you that training. There's resources out there. Self-learning.
Yeah.
Self-learning is key.
Can we take a break?
But you know what, though, Google? Not a lot of people have the capacity to do that.
Yes.
All right.
The desire.
That's it.
Or the desire.
Let's take a break.